The Museum of Grenoble is a municipal museum of fine arts and antiquities in the city of Grenoble in the Isère region of France. Located on the left bank of the Isère River, place Lavalette, it is known both for its collections of ancient art for its collections of modern and contemporary art. History. The Museum of Grenoble was founded on 16 February 1798 by Louis Joseph J. well before other French provincial museums. That day, an order of the local administration detailed the creation of a museum in Grenoble, in which Article 10 stipulated that the citizen Louis Joseph J. is appointed curator of this museum. In May of that year, the Interior Minister cancelled the creation of the museum, but a provisional authorization was obtained in December, which became final on 3 April 1800. Beginning in 1799, while engaged in collecting works of art of the Isère region, J requested a public subscription to purchase paintings and drawings, housed in 4 halls of the first floor of the former bishopric from its opening on 31 December 1800. The museum had 298 works of art including 177 paintings, 80 drawings or engravings, and 45 sculptures placed in the garden. Each hall had a name. The first Hall of Apollo was devoted to French painters. The second Hall of Castor and Pollux was devoted to Italian and French schools. The third Salon of Gladiator had copies of the Life of San Bruno by Eustache Lesueur, and the last hall was called Hall of the Venus de Medici, displaying art of the Flemish school. A few months after its opening, the Concordat of 1801 by Napoleon Bonaparte forced the evacuation of the premises of the museum to restore them to their original purpose. So in this way it was relocated on 14 July 1802 into the Central School, which is currently the Stendhal School. On 12 March 1807, a decree transformed the museum from a county museum into a municipal museum. On 15 February 1811, an imperial decree allocated 209 paintings to 6 French cities and gave 32 to Grenoble. In 1815, despite the partial dispersion of works as a result of the restoration, the collection continued to increase. The acquisitions, donations and legacies continued throughout the 19th century and made it essential to construct a new building despite there having been a building expansion in 1844. A new building designed by the architect Charles-Auguste Questel was inaugurated in 1872 on the current site of Verdun Square. The museum library, so called because it also housed the Municipal Library of Grenoble, is one of the great examples of museum architecture in France and Europe. Towards the end of the 19th century, a great patron, General Léon de Bélier, completed the museum's collection by donating 4 famous paintings by Francisco Zurbarán, continuing a long tradition of donations and bequests. He had a direct and massive influence on the richness and the nature of the collections. From 1895 until his accidental death on 15 July 1910, he bought for the museum 50 paintings, 13 drawings, 16 sculptures, 13 pieces of archaeology and hundreds of objects from the Far East. From 1920, the Museum of Grenoble was considered the premier museum of contemporary art in France since the Paris Museum did not open until 1947. It is even one of the premier museums in the world, together with the Folkwang Museum in Essen and the Museum Esthétique in Łódź, as well as the Museum of Modern Art in New York, which did not open until 1929. In 1982, President François Mitterrand announced a plan to construct a new building. The following year, the new mayor of Grenoble Alain Carignan and the Minister of Culture Jacques Lang agreed on the idea in the site of the new building, which was a park near the center of town. After the appointment of architects in 1987, construction began in 1990. On January 30, 1994, the new building housing the collections was inaugurated by Prime Minister Edouard Balladur. Located in the heart of the city, bordering the Isère River, it tripled the exhibition space of the old museum. Its total cost was 203 million French francs. To complete the museum, there is a sculpture garden in the Albert Michelon Park, a wooded area of 16,000 square meters surrounding the old city wall from the late 19th century. History of the location of the new museum. The current location of the museum was occupied since the 13th century by the great monastery of the Brothers Minor, known in France as the Cordeliers of Franciscans, until they moved to the current Burial Square in 1592. Integrated into the city in the 13th century by an extension of the Roman wall, the place was at the eastern extremity of the town and remained so until the 19th century, while different generations of fortifications were built over the centuries. Thus was built the Tower of the Island in 1401, serving as a defense system that allowed relative autonomy for the consuls of the city who considered it to be the main home city. In 1591, the future Duke of Les Diguières, who came to take possession of the city during the religious wars, built a new fortified wall, turning the place into a small fortress called Arsenal to protect himself from any rebellion of the inhabitants. In this way, the area became the first barracks in the history of the city. In the 19th century, General Haxo enlarged the precincts of the city from 1832 to 1836 by building a new fortification wall close to the arsenal, historically a place of military occupation. The area was occupied during the 19th century by several barracks, of which Vinoy Barracks was on the site of the museum and Bizarnet Barracks was opposite. Around 1888, a change was made to the Haxo Wall. At the urging of the mayor, Edouard Ray, and the population, the engineer created a new gate, the Gate of Soleil, to serve the new district of Green Island. This new gate obliged the military for technical reasons to correct the path of the Haxo Wall, building a new line of wall square to the old wall down to the edge of the Isère River at the site of an old Ravelin fortification. This new wall of 150 linear meters has been preserved from the sculpture garden to the football field, then going through part of the structure of the museum. In 1967, the Vinoy barracks were demolished, leaving room for a large parking lot. Architecture. Building. The present building of 18,270 square m was inaugurated in 1994 as part of a program of large works in the province initiated in 1982. It was designed by architects Olivier Félix Fauré, Antoine Félix Fauré and Philippe Macri from the architectural firm from Grenoble Group 6, assisted by museographer Lorenzo Picaris. On the site there were severe design constraints. The imperatives were in respect to the immediate vicinity of the site. To the northwest, a part of the Les Diguières wall dating from 1591 are recorded as being historical monuments. Nearby, the Tower of the Island dating from 1401 is also a register structure. To the east, the modified part of the wall built around 1888 must be conserved, forcing the integration of part of it inside the building. Finally, Finally, to the east, access to a football stadium must be retained during the development of the structure for an area with high urban population density. The museum is built over a huge parking lot on 3 levels, keeping it safe from flooding from the Isère River. For the exhibition areas, the museum itself is built on 3 levels, but most of the display halls are located at level 0. At this level, the halls are served by a wide central aisle. On the left, the 5 sequences of ancient art. On the right are temporary exhibitions. The end of the aisle has been left empty of any work in an arc. This huge area is dedicated to the 20th century and also gives access to the Tower of the Island. Levels -1 and -2 are smaller floors, and thus have a limited number of rooms. The lighting is no longer an overhead light useful for study as in the halls of level 0. At level 1 has installed after the lobby 3 rooms of Greek, Etruscan and Egyptian antiquities, and at the other end of the building, 4 rooms covering art at the end of the 20th century. Below, level 2 has 6 rooms for the 21st century. It is also at this level that leads to the spectacular integration of the end of the 19th century wall into this futuristic building. A few meters from the building, the museum features via a skywalk of glass and steel, the Tower of the Island, transforming it into a place of exhibition graphics. The architecture also incorporates the district football stadium into the complex. Inside, the transitions between levels are equipped with wide ramps and 3 lifts to travel between floors. The rooms are designed to rest the eye. Uniform wooden floors, white walls, etc. Around the cylindrical entry hall are the reception counter, library, shop, and cafeteria. Upstairs, museum offices, as well as those of the Association of Friends of the Museum, the Association of Museum and Music, which organizes concerts in an auditorium of 275 seats in partnership with the Louvre, and finally the André Chastel Library, equipped with a specialized collection of 55,000 art history books available to consult on site. Museum curators. 2 curators have made a special mark on the history of the museum, Louis Joseph J. and André Farcy. The first created and ensured the implementation of the museum from 1798 to 1815 before leaving the estate to Benjamin Roland. Painters Alexandre de Belle and Jules Bernard ensured the succession as preservationists. Then, during the 20th century, there was Xavier Bourgain, in particular Pierre-André Farcy, called André Farcy, curator from 1919 to 1949, who decisively guided the museum in favor of the collection of modern art. He left but agreed to come back in exchange for the promise of displaying a number of contemporary works by Matisse, Picasso and Monet besides some of the great works of the museum. This caused a violent press campaign against him. His opponents would come to name his art gallery the Regolarium. His successors were Jean Lemery, Gabriel Koueni, Maurice Bessette, Marie-Claude Beau, Gaudibert Pierre, Hélène Vincent, Serge Lemoine, and, since 2002, Guy Tassato. Attendance. Overall, the average annual museum attendance in the 2000s was 180,000 visitors. Collections. The museum offers the possibility of following without interruption Western history from the 13th to the 21st century, with each period represented by first-rank works of art, less known to the general public, as a parenthesis to the main course. There is a collection of 115 African statues and artifacts are in the aisle between the 19th and the 20th century. The visitor has the opportunity to use an audio guide for a fee that allows him to view the collections at his own pace. The commentaries are recorded by actors and are short and lively. The permanent collections altogether consist of 1,500 works in 57 rooms of 14,000 square meters, which are grouped as follows: Ancient Egyptian, Greek and Roman 2 rooms located off the lobby. The level 1 is devoted to Egyptian antiquities, with particularly beautiful sarcophagi. One room is devoted to Roman antiquities, and another room to Greek antiquities. The city of Grenoble is linked to the story of Champollion and that of Egyptology. For the 18th century, in fact, there are ancient Egyptian pieces from excavations run by the Antiques Office of the Municipal Library of Grenoble, of which Jean-François Champollion was the assistant librarian. It is natural that the collection found in the museum has not ceased to be enriched by many gifts in the 19th and early 20th centuries. Most important have been made by the French Society of Archaeological Excavations in 1907 and 1913 following the excavation of Antinopolis of Tuna El Gebel and Keom El Arma. Then in 1916 by the family of Count Saint-Ferréol. In April 2010, the prophetess of Antinoe, a 6th century mummy discovered in 1907 in a Coptic necropolis at Antinopolis in Middle Egypt, was returned to the Museum of Grenoble after more than 50 years of absence. The collection of ancient Egyptian antiquities is regarded as the 5th largest in France, after that of the Louvre. The Museum of Archaeology Mediterranean in Marseille, Lyon, and Dijon. It includes furniture and funerary objects of everyday life. The entire tomb is impressive, especially the fragmentary tomb of Amenhotep, son of Hapu, vizier of Amenhotep III. A third room of antiquities contains an interesting collection of Greek and Etruscan ceramic statues. 13th to 16th century. The collection begins with the origins of Western painting, then quickly reaches the period of Renaissance art. Santa Lucia assigned to Jacopo Torretti. 3-part work: The Virgin and Child with St. Gerard, St. Paul, St. Andrew and St. Nicholas by Taddeo di Bartolo. Christ meeting a woman and the sons of Zebedee and Noli Me Tangere by Veronese. The statue of Hercules of bronze dating from the 16th century and made by the sculptor Jacob Riccia in the 17th century. A copy is placed in the center of the city garden at the Hôtel de les Diguières in Grenoble. Works of Perregant, Fra Bartolomeo, Giorgio Vasari, Adrian Eisenbrand, and Georg Pence can also be found in this section. 17th century. This prestigious section is devoted to French, Flemish, Dutch, Spanish, and Italian painters and includes many masterpieces. In particular, the following works can be mentioned: Saint Jerome by Georges de la Tour, the finest collection of paintings by Francisco Zurbarán in a French museum. Pope Gregory surrounded by saints by Rubens. 6 paintings by Philippe de Champagne. Noli Me Tangere and his hanging. The appearance of Christ to pilgrims of Emmaus. Laurent de Lihire. The card game in a hotel by David Teniers. Scene of daily life in the 17th century. Many other works can also be found, such as 18th century. The works of the century are presented in the majestic grand format of the French school, such as Martyrdom of St. Andrew painted in 1749 by Jean Restaud for the College of St. Andrew in Grenoble, the Point of the Customs at Venice Canaletto. The Doge of Venice carried by the gondoliers by Francesco Guardi. Animals, flowers and fruit, painted in 1717 by François de Sportis. Snowy landscape with rocks and travelers, painted around 1750 by Francesco Foschi. Other paintings are notably by Nicolas de Largieri, Hyacinthe Rigard, Jean-Baptiste Gros, Joseph Marie Vien, Sebastiano Ricci, Giovanni Paolo Pagnini, and Thomas Gainsborough. This section also displays many busts by Antoine Barnave, 19th century. The 19th century is illustrated by a remarkable ensemble from the final period of neoclassicism until the period of Les Nabis, with works by, essentially an art museum. The Museum of Grenoble nevertheless has some sculptures from the 19th century, mostly in rooms 18 and 19, including that of Phryne from James Pradier. In room 17 is a plaster 2 meters high of Jean-François Champollion by the sculptor Bartholdi. This plaster has served as a model for the marble sculpture at the Collège de France in Paris. Regional art of the 19th century. The Dauphinoise school of the 19th century reached a level that justifies the prominence it holds in the museum. If a large room displays these small paintings, it is above all this landscape format that gives them the soul. The founder of this school, Jean Achard, created the first majestic landscapes that excited the painters that followed: Laurent Guetel, Charles Berthier, Ernest Hebert, the Abbé Cales. Many of these painters, despite the topographical precision required, thought it an inspired vision. 20th century rooms from 24 to 48. The section of the 20th century is particularly rich because the museum is considered the oldest museum of contemporary art in France. Spread over more than 20 rooms, the collection covers modern art from the beginning of the century to the most recent formal developments. Part of the collection comes from the important legacy of Agathe Simbat. All the trends and movements of the painter are present, such as Fauvism with the paintings of Henri Matisse, André Derain, Albert Marquet, Raoul Dufy, Maurice de Vlaminck, Émile Othon-Frisch, Jean Puy, Charles Camoin, and Kees van Dongen. Cubism with Georges Braque, Albert Gleizes and Fernand Léger. The School of Paris, represented by Amedeo Modigliani, Haim Soutine, Maurice Utrillo, and Chagall. 4 paintings illustrate the different artistic periods of Pablo Picasso, while there are also works of painters such as Pierre Bonnard, Jacques Villon, Natalia Goncharova, Paul Signac, Henry Edmond Crost, Claude Monet, Georges Rouault, Robert Delaunay, Gert Schwitters, George Grosz, Paul Klee, Vasily Kandinsky, František Kupka, Theo van Doesburg, Jean Arp, Nicolas de Staël, Balthus, Bernard Buffet and Hans Hartung. Matisse donated his interior of eggplants. Pablo Picasso's Woman Reading in 1921, Claude Monet's Corner of the Pont de Cheverny in 1923. Great names of surrealism are also present, such as Giorgio de Chirico, René Magritte, Joan Miro, Max Ernst, André Masson, Francis Picabia, and Yves Tanguy. Sculptures are also present in some rooms with works of Auguste Rodin, Georges Rouault, Henry Laurens, Raymond Duchamp, Villon, Jacques Lipchitz, Julio González, Ossip Zadkine, Max Ernst, Alberto Giacometti, Alexander Calder, and even Henri Matisse, again thanks to the Agathe Simbat legacy. The Museum of Grenoble is also a reference for contemporary art. Its collection is one of the oldest in France, including works by Pierre Solages, Christian Boltanski, Christo Tapies, Andy Warhol, Donald Judd, Robert Ryman, Jean Dubuffet, Jean-Pé Rizik, Annette Messager and Rebecca Horn. In 2012, the Museum of Grenoble acquired one of the 13 pinned cubist collages of Pablo Picasso dated spring 1914. Acquired for an amount of €750,000 thanks to the Patrons Club of the museum. Glass will be presented for 3 years for 2-month period starting from the 19th of December 2012. 21st century rooms from 49 to 54. The last rooms located on level 2 are devoted to the present century. They highlight the great diversity of forms and concerns explored by the creators of today using diverse materials, techniques and inspiration. The blue head by Thomas Shud is characteristic of this diversity. Drawings, most often displayed in the tower of the island, arranged into an exhibition of graphic arts. The old collection consists of 5,500 drawings, mainly from donations and bequests of early acute ones Mesnard in the 19th century. He will devote part of his life to his writings and collections. At his death in May 1890, the mayor of Grenoble, Auguste Gache, gave a eulogy on his great generosity in leaving 3,207 items to the museum. Italian drawings predominate, especially the Venetians, and the Florentines of the Renaissance and of Seicento, although there are also many other single drawings. The museum owns drawings by Parmigianino Palma the Younger, Annibale Carracci, Agostino Ciampelli, Guido Reni, Guercino, Luca Giordano, Giambattista Tiepolo, Giandomenico Tiepolo, Francesco Guardi, Giovanni Battista Pizzetta, etc. The old French drawings have recently been studied by Guillaume Casaruni, Barbara Breffon de Lavanère and Jérôme Delaplanche, resulting in the publication of a catalogue and enabling new attributions through the discovery of new designs. For the 17th century, a collection of drawings was found by artists such as Laurent de Lehire, Philippe de Champagne, and Vouet. The 18th century is represented by famous artists such as Watteau, Hubert Robert, and David. The Dutch school stands out for its importance, most notably Jacob Jordaens and Rembrandt. The 19th century is characterized by an important series by artists such as Eugene Delacroix, Fantin Latour, and Jonkind, with watercolors by Dauphiné. The 20th century collection ranks second in terms of importance for a French museum after the National Museum of Modern Art. As for the paintings, they owe much to the policy of the curator André Farcy. In 1923, the legacy of Agathe Sambat brought in 24 drawings, including a charcoal sketch of the dance by Matisse in 1909. Other than Matisse, the collection includes drawings by Jean Arp, Antonin Artaud, Pierre Bonnard, Alexander Calder, Marc Chagall, Jean Cocteau, André Derain, Raoul Dufy, Max Ernst, Leonard Fujita, Julio González, Joan Gris, František Kupka, Le Corbusier, Fernand Léger, Alberto Magnelli, Albert Marquet, André Masson, Joan Miro, Amadeo Modigliani, Pablo Picasso, Gert Schwitters, Paul Signac, Cy Twombly, Suzanne Valadon, Maurice de Vlaminck, Edouard Vuillard, and Ossip Zadkine. Some works exhibited. The Sculpture Garden. A sculpture garden, a concept born in the 17th century, has been installed on the perimeter east-northwest of the museum, in Albert Michelon Park, covering an area of 16,000 square meters. In 1964 it was the first development allowed at the location of an old half-moon fortification. Overall, the park is of square shape and meets the path of the massive 19th century fortification wall that ends inside the museum. Beautifully landscaped, this park contains the oldest tree in the city, a cedar from Lebanon planted in 1847. It offers a unique opportunity in the heart of town to display outdoor sculptures. The surface of the Michelon Park does not allow an unlimited area to present sculptures. In 1988, the choice of development was focused on the 20th century period, consistent with the extensive collection of the Contemporary Art Museum. Going to the park through the front of the museum, partly framed by the walls built at the end of the 16th century by the Duke of Les de Guiaz. Two works in metal and a bronze statue placed on the Esplanade François Mitterrand can be seen. These are Alexander Calder, Monsieur Loyal, 1993, height 9 meters, painted steel 1967. Marc di Suvero, Polar Star, 23 meters high, 18 meters wide, painted steel 1972. Marcel Guimond, Girl Standing, bronze 1934. In the Albert Michelon Albert Park, some works closest to the museum, such as Duna, are visible from the inside. These are Robert W. Elliott Rick, Standing Female Nude, Patronated Bronze. Marta Pan, Duna 1992, height 3.30 meters, 5 discs of pink granite 1991. Ossip Zadkine, Orpheus, bronze 1948. Berna Venet, 3 indeterminate lines, 1994. Weathered steel 1992. Elia Cuto and Ernest Driver and Amp. Marcel Guimond, Cecilia, Treated Antique, bronze 1928. George Rickey, Conversation 1991. Gottfried Honegger, Monofilm 26, height 5 meters, painted metal 1988. Morris Lipsy, The Great Wave, Stone 1978. Eduardo Chilida, Zahertz, Weathered Steel 1989. Anthony Caro, The Song of the Mountains, which backs onto the old wall 1993. Richard Nonnas, Transy West 1994. Eugene Dodin, Couple Pierre de Soignes 1993. A few works in the sculpture garden. The Library of Art History is open to the public with consultation on site. Books about the collection and the policy for purchasing works of art are the most important and heavily used by students. The library is open on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 2 p.m. to 6 p.m. It is closed during summer.